Cold steel, this is 1-6 Alpha, over. Tell 6 Axel that the little bastard's got claymores in the trees and blowing the shit out of us and give him some goddamn fire support.
Vietnam veterans don't talk much about the war, but when they do, these are the films that make them go silent. Some walked out of theaters, others said watching felt like being back in the country. These are the 10 most brutal Vietnam War movies that veterans say are too real. Number 10. The Deer Hunter.
Give them all flat tires.
Michael Cimino's epic tore through audiences in 1978 like shrapnel, and Vietnam veterans walked out of theaters either praising it as the truest depiction of what the war did to them or condemning it as exploitative Hollywood trauma. The film follows 3 Pennsylvania steelworkers who enlist together and end up captured by the Viet Cong, forced to play Russian roulette for their captors' entertainment. That central image, the gun to the head and the click of an empty chamber, became the film's defining metaphor for the randomness of survival in Vietnam. What gets veterans talking is how Cimino structured the film. He spends the first hour in their Pennsylvania town before anyone even deploys. There's a wedding, drinking, hunting trips, the rhythms of working-class life. Some critics called this padding. Veterans said it was essential because you need to understand who these men were before Vietnam to comprehend what the war took from them. The contrast between the warmth of that community and the hell they descend into makes the transformation devastating. The Russian roulette scenes are what made the film controversial. Historians have pointed out there's no documented evidence of Viet Cong forces actually using this as a torture method. Cimino defended it as metaphor rather than literal fact, saying the game represented the psychological torture and the arbitrary nature of death in combat. Veterans are split on this. Some say the emotional truth of feeling like you're playing Russian roulette every day in the country matters more than literal accuracy. Others argue that inventing atrocities undermines the real horrors that actually happened. Robert De Niro's performance as Mike, the one who holds himself together through sheer force of will until he can't anymore, captures something veterans recognize. The way he comes back changed, unable to connect with his old life, seeing threats everywhere. Christopher Walken as Nick, who never really comes home at all, stays in Saigon playing Russian roulette professionally because it's the only thing that makes sense to him anymore. That complete psychological break, the inability to return to normalcy. Veterans have said that's the realest part of the film. The final act in Saigon during the fall of the city, the chaos and desperation as Americans and South Vietnamese tried to evacuate, that sequence was shot with documentary-like immediacy. Cimino used actual news footage mixed with staged scenes, and the result feels genuinely chaotic and terrifying. The film ends with the survivors gathered for Nick's funeral, singing "God Bless America" quietly and uncertainly. Critics debated whether that was sincere patriotism or bitter irony. Veterans said it was both, the complicated love for a country that sent them to hell, and then didn't want to hear about it when they came back. Number 9. Casualties of War. Brian De Palma took a documented war crime and turned it into one of the most disturbing films about Vietnam ever made. Based on a New Yorker article by Daniel Lang, Casualties of War follows a 5-man reconnaissance squad that kidnaps a Vietnamese girl from her village, rapes her repeatedly over several days, and then murders her to cover their crime. Michael J. Fox plays the one soldier who refuses to participate and then has to decide whether to report to his own squad. What makes this film unbearable for some veterans is that it actually happened. The incident it depicts occurred in 1966, and 4 soldiers were eventually court-martialed. De Palma didn't soften anything. The abduction is brutal. The assaults are shown with enough detail to make the horror clear without being exploitative. And the murder, where they stab her and then shoot her repeatedly, is executed with cold documentary precision. Veterans who saw similar atrocities in Vietnam have said the film captures exactly how these situations unfolded, how normal men became capable of monstrous acts. Sean Penn plays Sergeant Meserve, the squad leader who orchestrates the crime, and his performance is terrifyingly human. He's not some psychopath or cartoon villain. He's a competent soldier who's been in the country too long, seen too much, and stopped seeing Vietnamese as fully human. The rationalization he uses, that she's just a gook and they deserve some entertainment after losing men, that casual dehumanization is what enabled countless atrocities. Veterans have said, Penn got that mindset exactly right. The way combat can erode moral boundaries when you're surrounded by people who reinforce your worst instincts. Michael J. Fox as Erickson, the lone dissenter, carries the film's moral weight. He's not portrayed as especially brave or righteous. He's scared, isolated, and knows reporting this will make him a pariah in his unit. The other soldiers threaten him, tell him he's betraying his brothers, and remind him that nobody back home will care about one dead Vietnamese girl. The pressure to stay silent, to protect the unit over doing what's right, that's the central conflict. Veterans have pointed out this is the impossible situation guys face constantly. You see something wrong, but reporting it means destroying the lives of men you depend on for survival. The film's final act, showing Erickson's determined pursuit of justice through the military legal system and the eventual trial, demonstrates how resistant the system was to prosecuting American soldiers for crimes against Vietnamese civilians. The defense attorneys argue the girl was probably Viet Cong anyway, that war is hell, and you can't judge combat decisions from a courtroom. The fact that convictions happened at all was unusual. Most similar incidents were never investigated or were quietly buried. De Palma made Casualties of War because he believed Americans needed to confront the darkest aspects of the Vietnam War. Veterans who praise the film say it's one of the few that honestly grapples with American war crimes rather than glossing over them. Those who criticize it argue it reduces the war to its worst moments and ignores the majority of soldiers who served honorably. Either way, it remains one of the most morally challenging Vietnam films ever made. Number 8. Platoon. Oliver Stone went to Vietnam as an infantryman, served 15 months in combat, and then spent years trying to get studios interested in a script about what he actually experienced. When Platoon finally got made in 1986, veterans recognized immediately that someone who'd been there had made it. The humidity, the exhaustion, the casual violence, the moral ambiguity, Stone got details right that Hollywood always screwed up. The film follows Chris Taylor, played by Charlie Sheen, a privileged college dropout who volunteers for infantry duty and gets assigned to a platoon operating near the Cambodian border. Stone structures the story as a battle for Taylor's soul between two sergeants. Elias, played by Willem Dafoe, represents idealism in trying to fight the war with some humanity intact. Barnes, played by Tom Berenger, represents survival at any cost and the embrace of violence as the only reality that matters in combat. What veterans praise most is the film's depiction of daily infantry life, the misery of humping through jungle with 60 pounds of gear, the constant fear of booby traps, the way you never see the enemy until they are already shooting. There's a scene where Taylor falls asleep on watch and nearly gets everyone killed, and the rage from the other soldiers feels completely authentic. In combat units, falling asleep on watch is an unforgivable sin because people die. Stone doesn't explain this to the audience, he just shows the consequences and trusts you'll understand. The village massacre sequence is where Platoon gets really uncomfortable. The platoon takes casualties from a Viet Cong ambush, and when they search a nearby village, Barnes executes the village chief and threatens to shoot a child to force the chief's wife to talk. Some soldiers start torching huts and threatening villagers, while others try to stop them. Taylor himself nearly rapes a girl before Elias intervenes. Stone based this on the My Lai massacre, and his own observations of how quickly discipline could collapse when guys were angry and scared. The firefight sequences deliberately avoid typical war movie heroics. Combat is chaotic, terrifying, and impossible to understand while it's happening. Guys shoot at muzzle flashes in the dark. Friendly fire kills people. Artillery gets called in danger close and nearly hits friendly positions. There's no glorious last stand or heroic sacrifice, just desperate men trying to survive while their perimeter gets overrun. Veterans have said this is exactly what combat felt like. The complete sensory overload and confusion. Stone didn't sanitize anything about the war or the men fighting it. The racism, the drug use, the casual cruelty, it's all there. But he also showed the camaraderie, the way guys looked out for each other, the moments of dark humor that kept people sane. The film ends with Taylor evacuated after being wounded, looking down at the jungle, knowing he survived, but can never really leave. Stone called Platoon his attempt to honor the men who didn't make it back, and veterans largely agreed he'd succeeded. Number 7. Hamburger Hill.
Cold Steel, this is 1-6 Alpha, over. Tell 6 actual.
John Irvin's film about the 10-day battle for Hill 937 in the A Shau Valley is the most tactically accurate Vietnam combat film ever made, and it's also one of the most physically punishing to watch. The battle earned its nickname Hamburger Hill because the fighting ground men into meat, and Irvin doesn't flinch from showing that reality. 72 Americans died, and 372 were wounded taking a hill that was abandoned shortly after being captured. The pointlessness haunts every frame. The film follows one squad through the assault, showing the same ground being taken and lost repeatedly as casualties mount. What makes it different from other Vietnam films is the complete absence of politics or big-picture strategy. These guys don't know why they're taking this hill. They don't care about domino theory or containment policy. They just know their orders are to take the hill, and they're going to keep attacking until they do, or they're all dead. Veterans who fought in similar battles have said, Hamburger Hill captures the physical reality of Vietnam combat better than any other film. The mud, the rain, the way the jungle is so thick you can barely move through it. The North Vietnamese fortified the hill with bunkers and trenches, and every assault meant running uphill through automatic weapons fire while carrying 80 pounds of equipment. Guys get shot, fall backward down the hill, and if they're lucky, someone drags them to cover. If they're not, they lie there bleeding until they die, or someone can reach them. The film shows how units fell apart under sustained combat. Guys crack under the pressure, refuse to move forward, and have to be physically pushed into continuing the assault. The racial tensions that existed throughout the military explode into open conflict as everyone looks for someone to blame for the nightmare they're trapped in. The new replacements, called fucking new guys or FNGS, are treated with cruel indifference because everyone knows they'll probably be dead within days. And there's no point learning their names. Irvin shot the film in the Philippines using actual veterans as advisors, and the combat choreography reflects real infantry tactics. The way squads move under fire, how they communicate, the use of smoke grenades and artillery support, it's all accurate. The final assault, when they actually take the hill, is exhausting to watch because the film has spent 90 minutes showing failed attempts. When they finally plant the flag, there's no triumphant music or celebration. Just exhausted men standing on a pile of corpses, wondering what the hell it was all for. Number 6. 84 Charlie Mopic.
Sir? Reconnaissance mission, Central Highlands. Our goal is to record procedures peculiar to this
Patrick Duncan wrote and directed this low-budget film shot documentary style through the viewfinder of a combat cameraman's camera, and the result is one of the most immersive Vietnam films ever made. The entire movie is presented as raw footage shot by Mopic, a motion picture specialist attached to a long-range reconnaissance patrol. You never see coverage or traditional film grammar. Everything happens in real time from one perspective, and that limitation makes it feel genuinely real. The setup is simple. A 6-man LRRP team goes into the jungle for a reconnaissance mission. Mopic is there to document their tactics and procedures for training purposes. What should be a routine patrol becomes increasingly dangerous as they start finding signs of enemy activity and realize they've walked into an area saturated with North Vietnamese regulars. The tension builds slowly because the camera never cuts away. You're stuck with these men in the jungle with no relief or escape. Veterans who ran recon missions have called this the most accurate portrayal of that specific job ever filmed. LRRPS operated in small teams deep in enemy territory, avoiding contact while gathering intelligence. The film shows exactly how they moved, the hand signals they used, how they set up night positions and rotated guard duty. There's no dramatic firefights for most of the movie, just the constant stress of trying to stay invisible while surrounded by enemy forces. The dialogue feels completely authentic, because Duncan was a veteran who served in Vietnam, and he based the characters on guys he knew. The way they talked to each other, the constant profane banter mixed with genuine affection, the dark humor they used to cope with fear. When things start going wrong, the communication between team members becomes clipped and professional, everyone falling back on training because panic will get them killed. That shift in tone happens naturally, without the film drawing attention to it. The camera perspective creates moments of genuine horror. When the team gets compromised and has to run, the camera is bouncing wildly as Mopic tries to film while sprinting through the jungle. You hear gunfire but can't see where it's coming from. Someone goes down and the camera swings around to show them hit. And then Mopic has to keep moving because stopping means dying. The final sequence, which won't be spoiled here, uses the camera perspective to create one of the most devastating endings in any war film. Number 5. We Were Soldiers.
Yeah, I can see that.
You call, we haul.
I speak to Minute Crandall?
Al. Safe. Out.
Randall Wallace adapted Hal Moore's memoir about the Battle of Ia Drang, the first major engagement between American and North Vietnamese forces. And veterans of that battle have said the film gets the chaos and brotherhood exactly right. Mel Gibson plays Moore, the lieutenant colonel commanding the 1st Battalion, 7th Cavalry, the same unit Custer led at Little Bighorn. That historical weight hangs over everything, as Moore leads 400 men into a valley where 2,000 North Vietnamese troops are waiting. What separates We Were Soldiers from other Vietnam films is its commitment to showing both sides of the battle. Wallace didn't just focus on American heroics. He showed North Vietnamese commanders planning their assault, their soldiers preparing for combat, their wives saying goodbye, knowing many wouldn't return. Veterans have praised this approach because it acknowledges that the enemy weren't faceless hordes. They were professional soldiers fighting for their country, with the same courage and fear as the Americans facing them. The film's first combat sequence drops you straight into hell. The Americans land by helicopter in landing zone X-ray and immediately take heavy fire. Men are getting shot before they even clear the choppers. The North Vietnamese have the high ground and the numbers, and they pour fire into the landing zone in coordinated waves. What makes it feel real is the complete absence of Hollywood moments where one soldier mows down dozens of enemies. Every killed enemy soldier is immediately replaced. The North Vietnamese keep coming regardless of casualties. Gibson's performance as Moore captures what veterans remember about good combat leaders. He's not superhuman. He's terrified but can't show it because his men are watching. When he makes the promise that he'll be the first to set foot on the battlefield and the last to leave, and that he'll leave no man behind, dead or alive, veterans have said that's exactly the kind of oath commanders made. Moore kept that promise during the actual battle, and the film shows the cost of honoring it as men risk their lives repeatedly to recover bodies under fire. The film also dedicates significant time to the wives back at Fort Benning, showing them receiving telegram notifications of casualties. Madeline Stowe plays Moore's wife Julie, who takes it upon herself to personally deliver death notifications rather than let impersonal taxi drivers do it. These scenes are devastating because they show the immediate cost of combat decisions. When Moore calls in artillery danger close to save his men, the film cuts to wives receiving notifications of the casualties that bombardment caused. That connection between battlefield and home front gives every death weight. The final assault, when the Americans call in massive airstrikes to break the siege, is simultaneously triumphant and horrifying. The napalm strikes are shown in full, the flames consuming everything, and the film doesn't look away from what that weapon does to human bodies. Veterans have said the Battle of Ia Drang was where both sides learned how brutal this war would be. The North Vietnamese learned Americans would use overwhelming firepower when threatened. Americans learned the enemy would accept staggering casualties to achieve their objectives. We Were Soldiers shows that mutual education without flinching and that honesty is why veterans respect it, despite its more conventional Hollywood structure. Number 4. Apocalypse Now. Francis Ford Coppola's hallucinogenic nightmare about a mission up a river into Cambodia to terminate a rogue colonel remains the most artistically ambitious Vietnam film ever made, and veterans have incredibly complicated reactions to it. Some call it the truest depiction of how Vietnam felt, the madness and moral collapse, and the sense that reality itself was breaking down. Others argue it's Hollywood pretension that uses Vietnam as a backdrop for philosophical posturing without caring about the actual experience of combat soldiers. The film follows Captain Willard, played by Martin Sheen, as he travels upriver to assassinate Colonel Kurtz, a decorated officer who's gone insane and established himself as a god among a Montagnard army in Cambodia. The journey becomes increasingly surreal as Willard moves deeper into the jungle and further from conventional military authority. Each stop reveals another layer of madness infecting the American presence in Vietnam. What veterans recognize immediately is the film's depiction of absurdity as standard operating procedure. The helicopter assault sequence set to Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries, with Lieutenant Colonel Kilgore surfing while his men die, encapsulates the disconnect between command and reality. Kilgore is a psychopath who loves combat and treats the war as sport. Veterans have said guys like that existed, officers who were having the time of their lives while everyone under them just wanted to survive. Robert Duvall's performance makes Kilgore both terrifying and somehow magnetic, which is exactly how these men came across in real life. The USO show sequence where Playboy playmates perform for thousands of soldiers who then riot and storm the stage captures something true about rear area bases. The combination of boredom, sexual frustration, and violence always simmering just beneath the surface. The girls are flown in, do their show, and evacuate before the riot fully erupts. They never see the actual war. They're just there to remind soldiers what they're missing, which only makes everything worse. The further upriver Willard travels, the more the film abandons realism for metaphor. The French plantation sequence, restored in Redux, shows colonial ghosts clinging to a world that's already ended. The bridge that gets built every day and blown up every night represents the futility of American strategy. By the time Willard reaches Kurtz's compound and finds a temple decorated with corpses and a mad king quoting poetry, the film has completely left conventional war movie territory. Veterans who defend Apocalypse Now argue that the surrealism is the point. Vietnam didn't make conventional sense. The objectives were unclear, the rules of engagement were contradictory, and the entire purpose of the war seemed increasingly insane the longer you were there. Coppola captured that psychological reality, even if the specific events are heightened and symbolic. The film is about how war destroys meaning and sanity, and veterans who felt that dissolution recognize it on screen. Others argue the film is fundamentally a director's ego trip that uses dead soldiers as props for philosophical meditation. The regular infantry experience is almost completely absent. The focus on special operations and command-level decision-making ignores the reality of most veterans' service. And the ending, with Willard killing Kurtz in a ritualistic slaughter, intercut with a water buffalo's sacrifice, is pure film school symbolism that has nothing to do with actual combat. What's undeniable is Apocalypse Now's influence. Every Vietnam film that followed had to reckon with what Coppola accomplished. Whether that's a good thing depends on whether you value artistic vision over authentic representation, and veterans remain deeply split on that question 45 years after the film's release. In numbers there, Full Metal Jacket.
Police call will commence in 2 minutes. Private Cowboy.
Stanley Kubrick's film is really two separate movies. The first half at Paris Island, showing Marine Corps boot camp under the sadistic gunnery Sergeant Hartman, and the second half in Vietnam during the Tet Offensive. Veterans consistently say the first half is the most accurate depiction of basic training ever filmed, while the second half is more stylized and less interested in tactical realism than in the degradation and absurdity of urban combat. R. Lee Ermey was a real drill instructor who was initially hired as a technical advisor. He was so authentic in his improvisations that Kubrick gave him the role, and Ermey proceeded to deliver one of the most memorable performances in any war film. His Hartman is cruel, profane, and absolutely committed to breaking down recruits and rebuilding them as killers. The verbal abuse is relentless and creative, and veterans have said this is exactly what boot camp was like. Drill instructors attacked every vulnerability to see who would break. The tragic arc of Private Pyle, played by Vincent D'Onofrio, shows what happened when someone couldn't handle the transformation. Pyle is slow, clumsy, can't meet the physical standards, and becomes the platoon's scapegoat. Hartman pushes him brutally, And when that doesn't work, he orders the platoon to punish Pyle collectively. The blanket party scene where recruits beat Pyle with bars of soap wrapped in towels is horrifying because it shows how the system created monsters by design. When Pyle finally snaps and shoots Hartman before killing himself, it's the logical endpoint of dehumanization as training methodology. The second half follows Joker, played by Matthew Modine, now a military journalist covering the war. The tonal shift is dramatic. Where boot camp was claustrophobic and controlled, Vietnam is chaotic and incomprehensible. Joker wears a peace symbol and Born to Kill on his helmet simultaneously, and when questioned about the contradiction, he explains it's about the duality of man. That encapsulates the film's view of Vietnam, everyone simultaneously perpetrator and victim, caught between what they were taught to be and what circumstances forced them to become. The urban combat in Hue City is shot like a nightmare. Buildings are destroyed, bodies lie in the streets, and the Marines move through ruins hunting an enemy they can barely see. The most powerful sequence involves the platoon getting pinned down by a single sniper who methodically wounds soldiers to draw others into kill zones. When they finally locate and kill the sniper, they discover she's a teenage girl. Her final request is for someone to shoot her and end her suffering, and the debate among the Marines about whether to grant that mercy is agonizing. Veterans have mixed feelings about Full Metal Jacket's second half. Some appreciate Kubrick's refusal to glorify combat or provide easy answers about morality in war. The film shows Marines as capable of both casual cruelty and genuine compassion, sometimes within the same scene. Others argue Kubrick's clinical approach creates emotional distance that undermines the reality of combat. The carefully composed shots and deliberate pacing feel like observation rather than experience. What's undeniable is the film's influence on how we discuss military training and its psychological effects. The first half has become the reference point for every conversation about whether breaking people down to build them back up is necessary, or whether it creates damaged soldiers who bring that violence home. Veterans continue to debate whether Hartman is a necessary evil or just evil, and that debate is exactly what Kubrick intended to provoke. Number 2. Born, on the 4th of July.
What's going on? Are you drunk again?
Hey, Mom.
Oliver Stone's adaptation of Ron Kovich's memoir is the most unflinching portrayal of what happened to veterans after they came home, and it's almost unwatchable in its honesty about physical and psychological destruction. Tom Cruise plays Kovich from his enthusiastic enlistment through his wounding that left him paralyzed from the chest down, to his transformation into an anti-war activist. The film doesn't offer any redemption or comfort. It just shows the cost and asks whether it was worth paying. The film's opening shows Kovich as a kid in Massapequa, Long Island, playing war games and watching 4th of July parades. Stone establishes Kovich as the perfect all-American boy, athletic and patriotic, exactly the kind of kid recruiters loved. When Kennedy asks what you can do for your country, Kovich enlists in the Marines convinced he's going to be a hero like John Wayne. Stone deliberately uses that iconography to show how deeply the mythology of warfare penetrated American culture. The combat sequences in Vietnam are chaotic. During one firefight, Kovich's unit accidentally shoots up a village of civilians, killing women and children. When Kovich tries to report it, his commanding officer tells him to forget it ever happened. Later, during another engagement, Kovich believes he accidentally killed one of his own men in the confusion. These incidents destroy Kovich's certainty about the nobility of the war, but he stays committed until a bullet severs his spine and ends his Marine career. What makes Born on the 4th of July almost unbearable is its depiction of VA hospitals. Kovich arrives paralyzed to a facility that's understaffed, underfunded, and overwhelmed. Patients lie in their own waste because there aren't enough orderlies. Rats run through the wards. The doctors are burnt out and treat patients with barely concealed contempt. Stone shows the daily humiliations of Kovich's new reality, the catheters and infections, and complete loss of independence. Veterans have said these sequences are absolutely accurate, that the government's treatment of wounded veterans was a national disgrace. Cruise's performance is completely committed and devoid of vanity. He shows Kovich's rage and self-hatred, his alcoholism and violence, his desperate attempts to reclaim masculinity through meaningless sex in Mexico. When Kovich returns home for the first time, his mother organizes a parade, but Kovich can see the pity in everyone's eyes. He's not a hero. He's a reminder of what the war does to people, and his community wants him to be quietly grateful rather than angry about being broken. The transformation into activism happens slowly. Kovich attends an anti-war demonstration and gets beaten by police. He meets other paralyzed veterans who've channeled their rage into opposition. Eventually, he speaks at the 1976 Democratic Convention, giving voice to veterans who felt betrayed and discarded. Stone doesn't make this transformation seem like redemption. Kovich found purpose, but he's still paralyzed, still damaged, still dealing with the consequences of decisions he made as a teenager who believed what his country told him. Veterans who've spoken about Born on the 4th of July say it's the most honest portrayal of what happens after combat. Not the heroic return, not the smooth reintegration, but the reality of being physically or psychologically destroyed and then discovering your country doesn't want to deal with the cost. The film is brutal and unforgiving, which is exactly why it matters. Number 1. Come and See Wait. This isn't a Vietnam War film. Come and See is Elem Klimov's Soviet masterpiece about the Nazi occupation of Belarus. But veterans consistently cite it when asked about films that capture what combat actually does to people, particularly young soldiers who aren't ready for the horror they're walking into. The film follows a teenage boy who joins the Soviet partisans and over the course of a few days has his entire understanding of reality destroyed by the atrocities he witnesses. Vietnam veterans point to Come and See because it captures the complete sensory overload and psychological destruction of combat better than any film set in Vietnam. The sound design is overwhelming. Explosions and gunfire, mixed with ringing tinnitus that never stops. The camera work is disorienting, often shooting from the protagonist's perspective as he stumbles through nightmares he can't process. By the end, the boy's face has aged decades, the innocence and humanity burned out of him. The film's depiction of war crimes, particularly the sequence where Germans herd an entire village into a church and burn them alive, goes beyond anything American films about Vietnam were willing to show. But veterans have said, this is what war actually looks like when all rules collapse. The My Lai massacre, the Phoenix Program assassinations, the things that happened in villages throughout Vietnam when Americans decided everyone was the enemy. Come and See shows that horror without flinching, and veterans recognize the truth of it even though the setting is different. What makes Come and See unbearable is its refusal to offer any escape or meaning. The boy survives, but he's destroyed. There's no lesson learned, no growth, no redemption. Just a child turned into something less than human by exposure to evil. Vietnam veterans have said, watching the film feels like being back in combat. The same overwhelming confusion and terror. The same inability to process what's happening because it's too far outside normal human experience. The reason Come and See tops this list, despite not being about Vietnam, is that veterans say it's the only film that truly captures what combat does to the soul. All the Vietnam films show aspects of the experience, but Come and See shows the core truth that every veteran carries. War doesn't make you stronger or more heroic. It breaks something fundamental inside you, and you spend the rest of your life trying to function with that broken piece. That's the reality most war films won't touch, and it's why veterans who've seen Come and See never forget it. So, there you have it. 10 films that strip away the Hollywood heroics and show what Vietnam veterans actually lived through. These aren't movies you watch for entertainment. They're the ones that force you to confront the reality of what war does to the people we send to fight it. That's why they matter.